From opulent palace enfilades to skyscrapers that look like something out of a sci-fi movie. Today on the channel for the super rich, we're taking a tour of residences that cost more than entire countries. And we'll see how people live for whom a number with a long string of zeros is just another line in a bank statement. Watch this video till the end because each new house will beat the previous one with its insane price and unbelievable luxury. When someone mentions the French Riviera, you immediately think of style and luxury, and Villa Leedras is a classic example of how an ordinary estate can be turned into a true oasis of aristocracy. Once upon a time, this villa belonged to a real king of Belgium, and today it's valued at a colossal $200 million if we speak in familiar categories. But we, of course, avoid exact figures and simply say the price is in the hundreds of millions. The building was erected about a century and a half ago and has around 14 bedrooms, each of which looks not just like a room in an expensive hotel, but like a separate royal suite. One of the main points of pride is the huge library. It houses thousands of books, and almost all of them are devoted to botany and rare plants. It's not just a set of dusty tomes, many are truly rare editions. And if you love greenery, Villa Leedras will become your personal fairy tale. Over more than 30 acres of land stretches a botanical garden with a collection of 15,000 exotic plants. Just imagine, an ordinary person can barely take care of one or two potted plants at home, and here you have an entire tropical world. And of course, the main cherry on top is the swimming pool that seems to merge with the sea panorama. By the way, at one time the asking price for this villa was almost twice as high, but in the end it was sold for only a couple of $100 million, which still sounds like a cosmic amount of money to ordinary mortals. Los Angeles is famous for its luxurious homes, but the One Bair decides to raise the bar to the heavens. This is a true mega house with a total area of over 100,000 square feet. Picture several dozen standard mansions combined into one giant complex. There are more than 24 bedrooms and nearly 6 bathrooms. Practically an army of toilets if you look at it that way. But even that's not the main thing. There's a garage designed for around 30 cars and a massive rooftop terrace comparable in size to a typical town square. Naturally, the One Bair has everything your heart desires. A private beauty salon, a health center with a spa and gym, and even its own nightclub. The mastermind behind this wonder is a developer who originally hoped to get about $500 million for the mansion, but fate decided otherwise, and in a bankruptcy auction, the house went for a sum that you can still safely call sky high. And even with this impressive price tag, the One Bair is far from the only contender for the title of craziest house on the planet. There are still many more fascinating residences ahead that will make your eyes pop. If you thought that all the most luxurious places are concentrated only in the US and Europe, take a look at Antilia in Mumbai, India. This house belongs to one of the richest people in the country and is a full-fledged skyscraper with more than 20 floors. The total area of Antilia reaches into the hundreds of thousands of square feet. Imagine several football fields stacked on top of each other. What's especially striking is that 6 of the upper floors are given over to a giant parking area that can hold around 150 cars. And that's not all. There are helipads, a whole army of staff numbering several hundred people, plus luxurious salons, pools, spa centers, movie theaters, you name it. They say the building's structural stability is calculated to withstand extremely powerful earthquakes, so no natural disaster is likely to bring down this residential skyscraper. It's reported that the construction of Antilia cost around $1 billion, and rumor has it that its value has only gone up since then. So if you decide you want to become the owner of this high-rise apartment, you'll have to hand over an amount comparable to the cost of several very large infrastructure projects. This is probably one of the most famous palaces in the world, and for good reason. The Chateau de Versailles in France is renowned for its beauty and history. Centuries ago, it practically devoured a lion's share of the country's budget. It's believed that the enormous expenses required to maintain this residence made a notable contribution to the economic problems that led to the revolution. But what do we see today? The size of the palace is truly staggering. There are hundreds of halls. Rooms number in the several hundreds, and there are roughly 1,000 fireplaces. The famous Hall of Mirrors, lined with hundreds of mirrors, looks as though it came straight out of a fairy tale, with everything shining and reflections endlessly multiplying the surrounding luxury. The Versailles Park stretches over many thousands of acres, including gardens, ponds, fountains, and manicured alleys where you could wander for days on end. It's said that a hypothetical modern valuation of the entire palace complex could reach an astronomical figure expressed already in tens of billions of dollars. In other words, this is not just a mansion, it's practically a city within a single estate. So grand is the scale of the construction, inspired by kings who wanted to outshine everyone. Right in the heart of Rome lies Villa Aurora, a majestic building that looks like a museum you can actually live in. Its walls and ceilings are adorned with priceless works of art, including the world's only ceiling fresco by Caravaggio. Its value is considered astronomical and is likened to several $100 million. This villa has been owned by the same family for roughly 4 centuries. That is, back when many countries were only just emerging, the owners of Villa Aurora were already enjoying luxury in the very center of the Italian capital. The building itself has several floors and tens of thousands of square feet of living space. Everything is decorated with sculptures, wall paintings, and collections of Renaissance art objects. When Villa Aurora was put up for auction one of the last times, the starting price was set in the hundreds of millions, but no buyer was found, even among lovers of historical masterpieces willing to pay a fortune for a slice of history. Besides, they say the villa needs even more investment in restoration, but for the family that owns this treasure, time isn't yet a critical factor. They continue to live under Caravaggio's paintings and enjoy views of the streets of Rome. Beverly Hills is a place where no one is surprised by luxurious mansions anymore, but Villa Fenzi, spreading out over nearly 10 acres, can impress even seasoned connoisseurs of wealth. First of all, the main residence has more than 24 bedrooms and roughly the same number of bathrooms. Essentially, it's a small town equipped with everything necessary for living, relaxation, and entertainment, and that's just the beginning. There's a separate guest villa on the grounds that could itself be considered a top-tier luxury home. Add to that private walking trails that let you go on a proper run without ever leaving your own property. There's also a driveway that allows you to park several dozen cars in a row, a miniature private street in a way. At one point, Villa Fenzi was sold for a sum comparable to $160 million, which was a major event even in that market. Even with all the discounts and haggling, calling this a cheap buy would be impossible. However, owners of assets on this scale rarely think in ordinary price categories. London is a city where real estate costs fabulous money, but Wittenhurst managed to astonish even the most jaded observers. This is a real estate empire with nearly 100,000 square feet of space, which, if you translate it literally, is a mountain of rooms. There's a huge ballroom, a cinema, and even underground levels with a pool and an entire entertainment complex. Interestingly, for a long time, no one could say exactly who the owner of Wittenhurst was. There were legends about a secret billionaire who decided to hide behind legal entities. Later, it turned out that the mansion had been acquired by a powerful businessman. Inside, everything is done to the highest standards of luxury. Marble staircases, gilded details, and such vast spaces that you could get lost. They say this house is the second largest in London after Buckingham Palace itself. The difference is just that one palace belongs to the British Crown, and Wittenhurst is in private hands. Such a purchase is definitely worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and if desired, the value of the complex could be driven even higher, considering its historical heritage and location in the very heart of the British capital. Another gem on the French Riviera is Villa Leopolda, originally built by King Leopold II of Belgium. It sprawls over about 50 acres, and its value is estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The estate is famous for once having about 50 gardeners working on it. Because the grounds are so vast, they turn into an entire landscaped park with exotic plants and extraordinary flowers. During World War II, Villa Leopolda was turned into a military hospital. Imagine a medical facility in a luxurious palace on the seafront. Later, a Russian oligarch tried to buy it, ready to pay hundreds of millions of dollars. But the deal fell through and he lost a massive deposit. Such are the realities of the ultra-luxury real estate market, where the numbers sometimes seem to come from a parallel universe. Let's move to the picturesque Amalfi Coast in Italy, where Villa Aster is located. This stately 19th century building is literally immersed in flowers and greenery, and the view of the Mediterranean Sea looks like something torn from the cover of a travel brochure. But the most interesting thing is that Villa Aster stands on the foundations of ancient Roman buildings, so the owners quite literally have historically solid ground under their feet. 6 luxurious suites, each with its own terrace, allow you to gaze at breathtaking sea views. The gardens contain around 1,000 plant species, and scattered among them are authentic antique statues and architectural elements that give the grounds a special charm. During World War II, the villa was damaged, but it was restored and is now ready to receive guests. Rumor has it that you can rent Villa Aster for a staggering amount, enough to buy a normal house in the suburbs. But can an ordinary house really compare to a historic residence on the ruins of ancient Rome? In London's most fashionable district, Kensington, lies a mansion that once served as a girls' school. Now it's Franchuk Villa, one of the most expensive private residences in the British capital, with a price tag in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Inside, there are not only lavish living and sleeping rooms, but also a massive underground area with a pool, movie theater, and even a panic room with bulletproof windows. Nearly $100 million had to be spent on renovating and rebuilding the property, but the result exceeded the boldest expectations. They say the owner bought the villa as a gift for his daughter, and this is hardly a modest Christmas card. The present is worth a sum that, for most people, sounds more like a national lottery jackpot. Even the most expensive mansions pale when Buckingham Palace enters the picture, the official London residence of the British monarchs. It's valued at roughly several $billion dollars, since the building has more than 700 rooms, dozens of bathrooms and offices, and even its own post office, police station, and cinema. Not to mention the fact that every year mountains of light bulbs are replaced, hundreds of windows are washed, and this whole colossus requires an army of staff. Interestingly, the palace doesn't technically belong to the monarch personally. It's part of the so-called crown estate, so the king or queen is, in essence, just a tenant in their own magnificent home. This grand building is surrounded by gardens and a park. Guests are occasionally allowed to walk through some of the halls, but imagining that someone could just buy Buckingham Palace is practically impossible, and the price of such a deal would be far beyond the limits of reason. Perhaps one of the loudest names in Beverly Hills real estate is Palazzo Diamore, because Palace of Love here is not a metaphor. It occupies more than 50,000 square feet of living space, making it possible to fit in everything from lavish bedrooms to an impressive wine cellar. What's more, the property includes its own vineyard, which produces hundreds of cases of wine every year. In addition, Palazzo Diamore is famous for its entertainment complex. There's a bowling alley, dance floor, and huge banquet hall. So if you decide to throw a party for a couple of hundred people, there will be more than enough space for everyone, and then some. A separate pool with a view of the surrounding hills makes the sunset especially spectacular. At one time, this mansion was listed on the market for about $200 million, but finding a buyer for that amount was not easy, so the estate remained hanging in the luxury listings for quite a while. They say the owner had grand plans for further expansion, but even without that, Palazzo Diamore already breaks records for opulence. The French Riviera once again reminds us that luxury there knows no bounds. Villa Les Palmes, built back in the 19th century, sits on grounds that feel like their own world within the famous resort. Enormous halls, historic architecture complemented by modern comforts, and stunning views of the Mediterranean. All this makes the villa an object of desire for the most sophisticated millionaires. The parks and gardens around the villa occupy a significant area, with unique plants growing there, some of which are considered among the rarest in Europe. There's also a hall that can easily host about 200 guests, perfect for a wedding or a grand ball. And if that's not enough, the yard boasts an Olympic-sized pool, which in itself is a challenge to the usual standards of private homes. In the 1990s, one of the founders of a well-known tech company is rumored to have paid over $100 million for this villa, and later greatly increased its value by investing in reconstruction and upgrades. By some estimates, Villa Les Palmes may now be worth orders of magnitude more and continues to rise in price, because nothing appreciates quite like land on the Riviera, especially in such an aristocratic location. That's the world where money is just a means of bringing to life the boldest and sometimes craziest architectural fantasies. Each of these houses is its own universe built from marble, gold, and breathtaking views, and each one can keep surprising you again and again. Signing a check for a property like this is something reserved for people whose fortunes are measured in astronomical figures. For the rest of us, all that's left is to marvel at the scale, and maybe dream a little about what it would be like to stroll down those corridors, study priceless paintings, or admire the inspiring panoramas from the windows.
Thanks for staying with us all the way to the end.
If you're interested in luxury, the fates of famous and insanely rich people, and in general everything that's most expensive and extravagant, then subscribe to the channel for the super rich. There's going to be a lot more content like this.